Bojack Horseman's worst season is the first season. Hot take, I know. Characters aren't fully in character yet, there are random cutaways for some reason. The general tone is just kind of basic. It just isn't representative of what most fans want to represent about the show. Sure, the show is really clever and funny, but obviously you should watch it because of how dark and depressing it is. I can't think of a better sell than that. You finally convince your friend to watch Bojack Horseman. You think it's going well so far. The pilot has okay moments, but you're nearing the end, and Bojack then vomits out cotton candy for a straight minute after multiple comments about sex. You just know they think your show is really stupid and lowbrow, but then they laugh. This gets you existential. Maybe your standards for comedy are too high. Maybe you'd be happier if you could enjoy regular jokes. Maybe if you weren't such a piece of shit, you wouldn't always judge people for the shows they like. Maybe you could have been enjoying Big Mouth this entire time. You're not supposed to be laughing. But yeah, season 1 isn't the best season, looking past the bias of it being my favorite show of all time. And one of these episodes seems to be less popular than the rest. I have even been told this episode almost made people stop watching the show. It's Season 1, Episode 5, Live Fast Diane Nguyen. This episode is currently tied for 3rd and 4th worst on IMDb, with only a rating of 7.3 stars. Personally, I do not agree with this at all. I think this episode has a lot more merit than people give it credit for. Hey guys, I'm here. And this is what I consider to be the most underrated episode of Bojack Horseman. The episode starts out with one of the most iconic cold opens of the show.
Relax, it's a lighter.
This bit is still pretty funny to me. Why doesn't Bojack get cold open compilations of the same clips over and over? The episode starts by them discussing the progress on Bojack's upcoming book that Diane is ghostwriting for. If you're wondering what this episode is going to be about, don't worry. There's some pretty subtle clues in the dialogue.
I don't think Diane's working out. I don't know if Diane is damaged enough to tell my story. She's so functional.
She's too functional. No, what are you talking about?
That's right, it's going to be a Diane episode, everyone. That might be one reason why people don't like this episode. Because for some reason, Diane is not the most popular character in the show, which I've always found weird. Like, yeah, it's subjective, but she's a really important and integral part of the show, and has a ton of character development throughout. In general, Diane always felt like the most normal and realistic of the main cast, and I've always liked that. We find out that Diane's dad just died, someone who she previously said would spend time with her on the roof, but we quickly find out that her dad was actually very mean to her growing up. Something we actually see later in the series, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This episode has Diane flying to Boston to pay her respects to her family, and Bojack tags along to keep helping with the book. This is where we get to meet Diane's family.
Oh, thank God you're here, Dee Dee. Pops is wicked departed.
Oh yeah, man, he departed so hard, and I do not like them apples, Dee Dee.
Donna, I'm gonna stock the lake with brown trout, take the Browns to the Super Bowl. How do you not get this? I'm gonna go take a shit, Donna.
So, about Diane's family. They suck. Despite the fact they are clearly Vietnamese, last name Nguyen and all, they have basically devolved into the most trashy of New England stereotypes.
And do it quick, the ice is melting.
Oh my god, is that Dad? Did someone draw balls on his forehead?
That was before we knew he was dead. We just thought he was wicked hungover.
In your face, Tad. In your face forever.
This is Artie. He's not very bright. Marty is another dummy who rewatches the same baseball game over and over and doesn't seem to understand the idea of live sports. He wanted to play baseball but got into an accident and basically spends all day just sitting around and doing nothing. Gary is the adopted brother, the black sheep, very funny. And her last brother is Tommy, who is supposedly the nicest of her siblings.
Ah, come off it, Ma. She don't mean no harm.
But I'll get back to him. Lastly is her mother, who is nothing but a giant put-down to Diane the entire episode. While her brothers have a more bullying approach to Diane, she is just abrupt and rude to her the entire time. Right at the beginning, she chastises Diane for not visiting, yet basically shuns her and wants her to leave. And apparently, Diane's father was the worst of the family, which is very upsetting. Diane had an abusive family, right? Let's just get that label attached to them right now. They are consistently vindictive towards her and always prioritize their own supply over her well-being. They didn't even name her until she was 4 years old. I would consider Diane to be the scapegoat of her family. She usually gets the blame for anything her brothers do, or even how she reacts to it.
Tommy, you begged me to stay and help.
Why does everything always gotta be about big shot Diane? Too good for her home.
Let's talk about Tommy real quick, because a lot of people see him as nicer, if not by much. But in reality, he's just as manipulative. He was the one that called Diane in the first place and tried to convince her to stay. He is good at breaking the wall much of her family puts up to keep Diane involved for their own sake. In this instance, getting her to do the entire funeral preparations and pay for everything.
Ma don't know what she wants. She wants you here. We all do.
Fine, I'll help. Is there a number for me to call?
Yeah, try 1-800-the-internet, dummy.
Now, does Tommy do this on purpose and is aware of how toxic he is? Or does he really think he's being well and good to her? The answer does not matter in the slightest. He is abusive, end of story. The worst thing her family did was make the Cryane video, where her brothers created a fake pen pal named Leo, basically getting her to write about her biggest insecurities and taking advantage of that to humiliate her, which any sane person should realize is messed up.
You know, it's nice that years later we can all laugh about this.
Yep, my therapist thinks the same thing.
Alright, let's talk about Bojack in this episode, since he only plays a more minor role. Bojack, after being told to wait in the car, ends up getting impatient and then barges in, making everything worse. See, Bojack grew up as an only child, and he wants to connect with Diane's siblings, and he seems to give them the same sort of supply their parents do, and does not chastise their poor behavior. It's very frustrating and in character, but Bojack does come to a rational conclusion about her family and how he was acting on his own later, without needing to be confronted about it. Although he never apologized, and this is probably where he first fell for her, you know, the trauma bond and all. Also, this episode has a B-plot where Todd, being stuck home alone, gets caught up in a scheme pretending Bojack's house belongs to David Boreanaz and offers tours. I'm too young to know who that is. Princess Carolyn also gets involved in this, and it escalates really quickly, and it's just really funny. I'm not going too much into detail since this B-plot is much more well received compared to the A-plot, so that brings up the question, why is this episode disliked? And why do I like it? Well, to answer the first question, Diane's family just sucks. The entire episode is them bullying Diane into organizing a funeral for them, and then not even showing up. They ended up getting their dad chummed instead, without even consulting her about this. Seriously, they could have still gone to the funeral and chummed him, they just don't want to put in any work for Diane's sake. I absolutely understand if this episode is just uncomfortable for a lot of viewers. Granted, I might be weird because I find this episode really funny. These characters are shitty, but also comically trashy and pathetic as well. I guess I also find Family Guy funny, so maybe that says something about me. But what really gets me interested in this episode are two main things: the way it shapes Diane as a character, and how they respond to the abuse by the end. Diane, throughout the series, is known for self-sabotaging herself. This is because she has grown to not trust any of the good things in her life. And if we remember the Cryane video, it's easy to see why. She was taken advantage of and was preyed on for wanting something better. She thought she found someone to connect with, and it was ripped away, only making her life worse at home. Throughout the series, she was never satisfied with what she had, often pushing for more or feeling like it wasn't deserved. Most notably was when she left Guy in Chicago, basically saying he was the only good thing in her life and didn't think that was fair for either of them. It only took some reassurance before realizing that she should pursue something that makes her happier and to appreciate it. I think there's always some truth to wanting to be a better person before being in a relationship, but in Diane's case, it really was her rejecting any sort of happiness. We see more of this in Good Damage, where she still falls into similar habits, rejecting her antidepressants in order to write her book, which in her mind requires her to embrace her trauma. Throughout the episode, she tries to remember and put into words her trauma, and every time, it's a muddy and cloudy vision that bounces around with no direction, only spiraling more into a depressive state. Yet her mind and vision is brighter when she instead tries to write about a teen girl food court detective story. But it isn't what she tells herself that she wants. This is what leads to the core of the episode.
If I don't, That means that all the damage I got isn't good damage. It's just damage. I could have been happy this whole time and written books about girl detectives and been cheerful and popular and had good parents.
Everything we learn about Diane in this episode directly correlates to how she processes and deals with her trauma in the future.
That's the way to be.
It's not that easy.
Yeah, I know. But wouldn't it be nice if it was?
Now, I might be biased since Good Damage is my favorite episode of the whole series, but that's not the only reason I think this episode is objectively great. And that's my second point, how Diane responds to the abuse by the end of the episode. Do you know how this episode ends? Does her family finally come around, give her a big apology, or does Diane get some big revenge on them for what they did? No, she just leaves. And that is actually really awesome. Diane's family is never going to realize that they were wrong, and if they did, who cares? Diane, after this episode, is entirely no contact with her family. They have no idea where she even is, and that is for the better. The episode never gives them any way to justify their abuse or redeem themselves. Compared to episodes like The Parents and Gumball, a supposedly emotional episode that revolves entirely around Nicole having to forgive her abusive parents.
Like the time I needed a blood transfusion and you gave me the wrong blood type?
Why settle for B- when you can have A+?
Nothing was ever enough!
But did you really have to walk out like that?
Look, this shit sucks. But in Bojack, this kind of behavior is treated the way it should be.
Family is a sinkhole, and you were right to get out when you had the chance. You want those guys to be proud of you?
I guess I was just hoping to get some modicum of closure.
Keep living forward.
Yeah, but every time I come back here, they...
So don't come back here.
And this level of maturity is coming from a season 1 episode, the same season with...
Oh my god!
I think I make a good case for this being the most underrated episode of Bojack Horseman, and goes to show you how good the series was straight from the beginning. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is my first long-form video on the channel, and I plan on making similar content like this on all sorts of different shows. Won't just be episode reviews, but all sorts of fun topics I feel like covering. Well, that's all I have for now.
So, smell you later?